Welcome to r/AskReddit. It's the place to ask and answer thought-provoking questions. And today's question is, employers and managers who had to fire their best employee, what happened? Worked in a restaurant at a hotel chain. Management regularly found meaningless reasons to suspend various employees or cut hours. This one guy had been there almost 13 years. Clients loved him, staff appreciated his presence, and he often came to the rescue of anyone requiring help. Everyone could depend on him, and he supported everyone. He had, like everyone in a restaurant, bumped heads with management now and again. Like everyone. On one particular season, they decided they were going to groom him in the eventuality to take on more responsibility. His position would eliminate his right to tips, but it came with insurance, a retirement plan, and steady pay. He had kids, was in his mid-40s. It all made sense why someone would take that job. He would, however, no longer be in the union. Fast forward to the day after his training is complete. The guy comes in with his management uniform and all. Some waiter calls in sick, and instead of him calling in another employee, he decides he was going to handle a few tables and the management responsibilities. At the end of the shift, the hotel manager summons the guy into his office, like the boss of his boss. They fired him straight away. He was escorted out of the building, and our boss said there was strict rules and management working tables harmed the hotel's image. It was complete BS. He had maybe taken 2 tables and split the rest amongst the rest of the staff. Everyone basically agreed they promoted him just to get him out of the union, to be able to fire him. A number of employees left shortly after, for other various reasons. It was a sort of shaking up the coup, and anyone who wouldn't fall in line would be shown the door. Today, that restaurant no longer exists. They closed down maybe 2 years later, rebranded the restaurant from American Steakhouse to Italian/French dining. New cooks, new waiters, new management. It was just the sort of catalyst or the first domino. Top manager for retail job I worked at lost her keys to the store and also had the keys to all the registers on the key ring. The registers started going short or would be empty aside from the change and dollar bills in the drawer. This went on for months. Corporate found out after installing a new set of security cameras overnight without her knowledge. She enlisted a group of sales associates to do most of the dirty work, but they found out she was the ringleader when they found out all the sales associates would bring her the stolen money, and she would dole it out after taking her cut. He was one of my best weekend workers. Dependable, always on time, really good at his job. I got a call from my management on a July 4th saying, "We're going to need to find a replacement for name." I say, "Why? Did he find a better job?" My management, "No, he was arrested for murder last night." So let's just say I didn't have the chance to fire him. I was dumbfounded when I got that call. Edit 1. Story time. So the story behind it is, a friend of the victim was worried when the victim wasn't answering calls or texts. She got in touch with the landlord of the facility, expressing her concerns. They enter the apartment and find her face down in the bathroom, with the wrist duct tape and duct tape around her mouth and nose. She was already dead by the time they got to her. The place had been rummaged through. Well, my employee lived right above her, and just by asking him simple questions about it, the police became suspicious of him, obtained a search warrant for his apartment. They found some of her clothing along with a missing money jar of hers, as well as duct tape. He was arrested that night in front of a camera crew, in his work uniform of all things. Now he is sentenced for the crime and is on suicide watch in jail. The shame is he killed a woman who had terminal cancer. Had a guy who would work his A off daily inputting data into spreadsheets. Would come in, put in solid hours of actual work, not goofing off. He would literally get 4 times as much stuff done a week as anyone else in the office. After 3 weeks straight of this, other people started to take notice and occasionally ask him to help them out when they are behind, and he obliges. This gets worse and worse, and eventually people are basically just walking all over him while they spend all day Facebooking and whatnot, because he won't say no if they ask him to help with their work. The dude just keeps trucking through though. About 4 months into working there, it's gotten to the point where you can hear the extra C girls talking about leaving early and not getting into trouble, because he'll just do all the work for us if we ask anyway. Well, the guy goes into the boss's office, and I work right next to it, so I can hear more or less the entire conversation. I'm paraphrasing, but it went something like this. "I would like a raise. I'm doing way too much work for how much I'm getting paid. Everyone else who works here is so lazy. I even have people making jokes about how I'll do their work for them, and they'll get paid for it." Well, name, I can sympathize with you, but you have to understand, I can't just give you a raise. If I give you a raise, I would have to explain to everyone why you got a raise and they didn't. You could tell them it's because I'm doing half of their work for them while they look at stupid memes. I'm sorry, name, it just wouldn't work out well. Well then, is there any positions available above mine that I could apply for a promotion to? I don't think we can really look into a promotion this early into you working here. We would need time to properly evaluate your work ethic. Seriously? You seriously just said that to me? I'm not going to break my back doing an entire office's work for a company that doesn't give 2 SHs about me. You and this entire office can go F themselves. He walks out of the office fuming mad and yells, "Hey everyone, boss just denied my raise, so no more leaving work early for any of you lazy F-heads, cause I effing quit." It was like a scene from Office Space in real life. What happened to office productivity after that? A lot of people were and complained a lot for a few weeks. Production slightly decreased as everyone else struggled to do the bare minimum to avoid getting fired. It also made the boss pay attention to the people working around him for all of 2 days, before he went back to congratulating himself for being such a good boss. Not me, but a story from when I worked at Disneyland a long time ago in attractions, rides. The area manager loved this one particular cast member, employee, like this was the son he never had. This CM was promoted to lead on one of the roller coasters fairly quickly in his regime. One night he was the lead on the closing crew, and the crew decided to ride after hours. Idiots that they are, they went without the lap bars down, and on one turn the ride is visible from the sidewalk. Even though the park was closed to guests, security was still in the park, and a security guard saw the train go by with the CM standing up through the turn. Security gets a hold of Theme Park 1, the manager in charge of the park for the night, who calls Attractions 1 to find out what's going on. Not surprisingly, every CM who was on the closing crew that night was fired. Unfortunately, so is the prodigal son, because he was the one who dispatched the train without the lap bars down. Wow, I'm surprised the computer running the ride would even allow someone to override the lap bars. Did this happen a while ago? Yeah, this was the late 1990s. The older rides can be dispatched without lap bars down, like in the morning when they're doing test runs, or when they're adding or pulling trains. The newer rides will have alerts when there's a noticeable amount of weight in the seat, but the restraint isn't fully locked. Even still, on this particular train, the lap bar is so loose that the CMs could have easily put the bar down, but put their legs over it. I didn't have to do the firing, but for whatever reason, my colleague had it in for this mid-level supervisor. She was a great trainer, did everything she was asked, took initiative and then some. She was always worth well more than what she earned, and had an absolute passion for the work. We worked with kids with autism. After a few months of having some vendetta against her, my colleague wrote her up, literally for being away from her desk too often. Her uncle had recently been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer, and she was the only relative in town who could care for him. So the time she was away from her desk, she was stepping out to cry when she felt overwhelmed, and didn't want people to see her cry. I found out after she was let go for this, that she had informed the supervisors of this when her uncle was diagnosed, and that she was feeling very emotional about it, and may need to take days off, or take more frequent breaks to gather herself again, and remain productive. Instead of showing compassion, my colleague used this as an opportunity to terminate her despite having no other red flags, feedback, or performance issues. There was simply a personality difference, and she didn't gossip with the other supervisors. And this was all done with our other colleagues and supervisors' blessings. I don't work for this company after I found out about this. I wasn't the manager, but we had a supervisor who was a rising star in the company. Turned a struggling operation into one that was running well under budget, and was generally easy to work with. We also had a mechanic who was a lazy sack of SH, and nobody could ever find him. So one day, the operations manager was looking at the security footage, trying to figure out what the mechanic was doing all day, and caught him selling pills out of his truck in the parking lot, so he called the police. When the police showed up, the mechanic was in his truck, in the middle of selling drugs to the supervisor. They were both fired. The operation went from being under budget to being $50,000 to $100,000 over for the next few months. Corporate set a trap and baited him into stealing. He was a great guy, fun and interesting, easy to get along with. He would volunteer to take the early shifts and open the store. He'd receive the new inventory and stock the shelves himself. His cash was always correct, and he never did anything wrong, until he did. One morning he opened the new stock shipment and loaded the shelves. There was an extra item in the box that wasn't listed on the manifest. The correct procedure was to add it to inventory and put it on the shelf. He instead opted to claim it wasn't there and took it home. The perfect crime, right? I had to fire him the next day, and it sucked. Part of my job is to process expense reports from the sales department. I noticed one month that the top salesman had claimed a plane ticket expense twice, once when he booked it, and then again when he took the flight months later. I reviewed his past expenses and noticed he was doing this regularly. When he booked the flight originally, he would claim the full amount of the ticket. Then when he used the flight, he would claim each leg of the trip as a separate daily expense, so that the receipt amounts wouldn't match, so as to avoid detection. This is how I figured out he was doing it intentionally. I showed the evidence to the CFO, and he was gone the next week. I only went back 3 years, but he stole about $10,000 over those 3 years. I work at a store where we have to ask for donations for the charity we support at every transaction. We're in competition with the other stores in the chain, and whichever store has the highest percentage of donations after 3 months gets a bonus. Every employee, cashier or not, gets $100. Well, one of my assistant managers was awesome. Always had the highest percent of donations per transactions and highest dollar amount. She always did a great job in all other aspects of the job as well. Well, it turns out she was offering every customer her employee discount if they donated. So if someone spent $500 and she gave them 30% off, they wouldn't all mind donating $10 to $20 per transaction. Well, it came back from corporate what she was doing, and we had to let her go. We had a new girl get 100% for 2 weeks in a row on her charity donations. Turns out she'd been charging everyone for at least a $1 donation, regardless of whether or not they'd approved. We actually had to refund donations to those angry customers that really didn't want to donate. I used to work for Dell back in 1998 to 2000 in their sales department. This is just right before people ordered online, so it was still a call center. To make a really long story short, I was one of their best sales reps. Top 3 every month. I was making about $5,000 a week as a 23-year-old. They decided to replace me, and most of my team with temps, making $11 an hour and no commissions. Only I didn't know this. I was given a great opportunity to train a new class of incoming salespeople. Little did I know I was training our replacements. Once they hit the floor and were running, they fired me and about 200 other salespeople. F Dell. Oh, then a few years later, even the temps got fired, so they could move all those jobs to a call center in India. He was our fastest forklift operator. Guy could get a truck loaded in 7 to 15 minutes, but he started developing an SH attitude, and we just couldn't work with him. The new operators we have take 30 to 45 minutes to get a truck loaded, and they're legitimately a little dumb and have a hard time reading. I don't know if it was worth it. Probably developed an attitude because he was tired of getting paid the same as those who'd take twice as long as him. This is it. I'm in the military and cannot control my guys' pay or promotion, but I will do whatever it takes within my control to reward outstanding behavior. If that's heading home early, a write-up for award, or the better job when jobs are divvied up. Otherwise, you get the why would I bust my balls turning to when the rest of the crew is smoking and joking. He'd been at the company for 8 years before I became his manager. All of his reviews were 5-star. He was effing awesome. So I wanted to see what his deal was, because it was odd to have that one standout person. I shadowed him for 5 days. He was 100% on the level with his work. He did it all correctly and quickly. Satisfied, I just let it be. 2 weeks later, he's arrested and fired. He'd hidden several cameras in the ladies' bathroom. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a good day.